A month ago, Arsenal had a 97.6% chance of winning the league. Now you're looking at multiple losses in their last few games, and after losing just twice in the previous 46, this team seems to fall apart right when the pressure hits its peak. Yes, you can always point out how long the Gunners have been at the top of the table, but at the end of the day, as we have seen in multiple years, it doesn't matter who's at the top in February, March, even April. It's about who's there at the end of May. Because football doesn't reward you just because you were good in the beginning of the season, or even in the middle of the season.
It's a long way, huh? The Premier League is not easy. You don't win it by January.
Yeah, that's when Arsenal are usually at their best, when there's no pressure. Like seriously, Arsenal before the new year is like one of the best teams in the world. And again, we've seen it in the 2026 season. As soon as New Year hit, the performances have slowly gone worse every single week. Sure, the fans have coped by saying, hey, we're at least winning. But the crumbling that we've seen in the last few weeks is just a product of all the bad performances that have happened before. It's just now the results didn't follow. The problem with this team has always been that they are never good when the pressure is at its highest, when we're in the business end of the season. And I'm not just talking about the Premier League. You look at them losing in the Carabao Cup final. Now, losing a final, it can always happen. It's a one-off game. But to lose by having such a toothless attack, by not creating any chances, by being beaten 2-0, by not one of the best City teams of all time, not even one of the best City teams in the past few years, it's not a great look, especially when you're supposed to be an Arsenal team in the peak of your project. Like, this isn't Arteta early in his project, luckily making a cup final. This is a team that has spent a serious amount of money, a team that has been coached into the ground by Arteta, multiple training sessions, multiple years for him to implement his style. There are no excuses for you to lose a final with your tail in between your legs. Then we saw the same thing in the FA Cup, where they were eliminated by Southampton. And then even in the Champions League, yes, they beat Sporting, but my God, they made it a lot tougher than they had to. They grinded out a 0-0 result at home, and then in the first leg, they had barely gone by with one goal in the last minute from Kai Havertz. So no, it's not just a drop-off that we have seen in the league. This drop-off, as I stated, has been happening since January of 2026. It's just a lot of people ignored it because they're like, hey, Arsenal are still getting results. They justified the negative football and the ugliness that we were seeing on the pitch by saying, hey, if you get the 3 points, you're good to go.
If it means finishing top, you can bore the life out of me. I really don't care.
But now that the results are not following, there's a bigger microscope on the fact that these guys have just not looked like a team that's at the top of the league. Now, the biggest reason for Arsenal struggling is really their attack. History has shown us that when you want to win the Premier League, you need elite world-class attackers, especially if you're going to beat Manchester City. Like Liverpool had prime Mane, prime Salah, prime Roberto Firmino, and they were able to only get one league title, and that was after their players putting up some incredible numbers. Even a team like Leicester, who were underdogs when they won, they had world-class attackers. They had Jamie Vardy, who at the time was by far and away the best striker in the league, and they had Riyad Mahrez, who was the best player in the league. Two high-quality attackers were able to help Leicester get through the finish line. With Arsenal, you really don't see that. Yes, Victor Gyökeres has gotten some nice goals in terms of stats, but I think anybody that has watched Arsenal regularly will tell you nobody's convinced by that guy. That's the reason that Arteta even dropped him for some of the biggest games of the season, because he felt the team would play better with Kai Havertz up there. That's right, Arsenal spent all that money on a guy who was scoring 50 plus goals a season just to end up going back to the hybrid midfielder slash striker role, or whatever you want to call it, that Arteta has created for Havertz. And that's been the problem with Arsenal all season. We know their defense is good, but the attack has always been a big question mark. Eze was brought in as a way of improving the creativity in the squad, but besides the banger in the Champions League and consistently good performances just against Spurs, he hasn't offered what the team expected either. Saka and Odegaard were supposed to be the two big guys on Arsenal. When you look at previous seasons, they were seen as the world-class attackers on this team. But Odegaard has been dealing with injuries all season, and so has Bukayo Saka. So it might very well turn out that Arteta used the best seasons of these guys' careers in previous years where Arsenal didn't win the league. Like Odegaard was a magician in 2024. So was Saka. Saka was really good in 2023 as well. But we really haven't seen that duo replicate that form since 2024. And if Arsenal are going to get through the finish line, that's what they would need. They would need the high quality attackers to show up and create moments of magic out of somewhere. Because Arteta's system works in terms of having Arsenal beat contenders, but to get over the finish line, you need world-class players, or at least good players that can have world-class moments. And we just really haven't seen that from Arsenal at all through the season. That's why so many people people doubted them even when they had a huge lead. Because you look at Manchester City, they have Haaland, they have Cherki, they have Doku, even Semenyo can pop up with an important goal. But who do Arsenal really have? Especially now that a lot of their players have genuinely been ran into the ground because Arteta just doesn't believe in rotating. And because of this poor attack, everything has completely flipped. Arsenal went from being fully in control of the title race to now relying on Manchester City to slip up. Now, of course, Arsenal can still get it done. They can still win the league. But do you know how mentally tough it is to recover after you played the rivals that you were going up against in a cup final and you lost to them, and then after that, you kept losing? They lost against Bournemouth, they got past Sporting with a draw, and then they lost to City again. So yes, Arsenal can still win the league, but they've put themselves in a position where it's become much more difficult. Like, if Arsenal had a competent attack, this league should have been wrapped up by like January, the way Liverpool did in the previous season. Because remember, a lot of people questioned that Liverpool team, but hey, they had Mo Salah, they had a guy who won the Golden Boot and the Playmaker of the Season award. Even if Arsenal wins the league, none of their attackers get into the team of the season.
If you're thinking of picking a team of the season and you pick a front four, the Arsenal team gets in that.
It'll just be Declan Rice in midfield and a couple of people from the back line and Raya. That tells you everything you need to know when a team who is the league leader doesn't have a standout attacker. And that was interesting to me because I went back and I looked at the last team to win the Premier League where their best player wasn't an attacker. And it was actually Manchester City in 2021 because that was the year that Ruben Dias won the PFA Player of the Year. So City's best player in that league winning season was a center back. But even that team, they had Kevin De Bruyne, they had Raheem Sterling. I believe they still had Sergio Aguero. So even though Ruben Dias got the award, they still had other top quality attackers. Arsenal really don't have that. And the worst part about this is that City have basically handed Arsenal so many opportunities throughout the season to just finish this thing. This is not a great Man City team. This isn't the team that we saw in 2024 come back and win every single game. This isn't the treble winning team of 2023. This isn't the team from 2021. Because City haven't been at their usual level for basically 2 seasons now, obviously in 2026 they've been much better than 2025, but they've still been a level below what we're used to. Arsenal just didn't take advantage. There were so many moments where they could have extended their lead and they just made this title race so much closer than it needed to be. And because they keep falling over themselves, they just don't look like a team that has the mentality to go all the way.
I think, to be honest, it's in here. It's the mentality. Great players are all over the leagues, all over the clubs. Arsenal also, they deserve us. They went there, they did an unbelievable season, but I think the difference was in here. When they come here, when they face us here in the Etihad, I saw them, these guys, they don't want to beat us. They just want to draw, you know, and that mentality, I think we wouldn't do it the same way. And we catch it.
Like, you know how crazy it is that at one point these guys were 9 points ahead, yet they were the nervous ones. They were the ones that everybody was doubting. The worst part throughout all of this is I think how people are viewing Arsenal now.
If Arsenal win the league, this could be the worst team to win the league.
Because as you can see from my jersey, I was a big Thierry Henry fan, and I remember growing up, a lot of people had so much respect for Wenger's Arsenal. They played beautiful, fluid football, and they were just a joy to watch. They had a footballing philosophy and identity. I remember them going head to head with that prime Barcelona team in 2011. Now under Mikel Arteta, it seems like nobody likes Arsenal. Now the Gunners will make the argument that you guys liked us during that period because we played beautiful football, but we were pushovers. I don't think that's true. Yes, when teams win titles and they're seen as a perceived threat to win the Premier League, you'll naturally get haters, sure. There are definitely some people that don't like Arsenal because they're a good club now. But I think the main reason that people don't like Arsenal is, number one, their fans are very deluded.
He's the closest thing England have ever produced to someone like Messi.
But number two, the football just isn't attractive. Usually in the Premier League in the past, when we've seen league leaders, their football just stands out. I don't think anybody overly hated the Manchester City teams. I think they hated that they made the Premier League boring, but nobody actually hated the football because it was beautiful to watch. Same thing with Liverpool. Sure, they had haters, but I don't think anybody was like, oh, I don't think these guys deserve to be at the top. But Arsenal, the whole year, there's been question marks on how these guys were actually leading. So many games, it felt like they were just playing for set pieces. Now, I know they'll show you the stats where they had good open play goals and their goal difference was even higher than City, but I don't know, everybody was watching the same game. I know what the stats might say in certain situations, but I think even Arsenal fans, the non-deluded ones, can tell you a lot of times they struggled from open play. They struggled to create chances. They struggled to beat down a low block. And it seems like in the past few weeks, basically ever since that Carabao Cup final, Pep gave every team a blueprint on how to stop these guys. So for many people, I just think it's the fact that they're playing such negative football. They've spent so much money, they've had so many years in this Arteta project, and yet the product on the screen is some of the most negative football we have ever seen from Premier League leaders. Now again, Arsenal fans will come out and tell you, well, Jose Mourinho played a defensive style. That's true, his Chelsea teams weren't the most attractive playing team, but those teams had world-class attackers. In 2015, he had Eden Hazard, he had Cesc Fabregas, Oscar. If you go to the mid-2000s, early 2000s, he had Frank Lampard, he had Didier Drogba. So I agree, Chelsea were not the most entertaining team all the time, but they still had these top quality attackers that would come up with moments of magic. They were still more entertaining than what we have seen from Arsenal in 2026. The problem with this Arsenal team is they just play with so much fear. Again, go and watch the Carabao Cup final. Pep just asked his team to just let Arsenal have the ball because these guys are so afraid of going forward. I swear some of these guys, especially the midfielders like Rice and Zubamendi, they think they're gonna get like a nosebleed or something if they try and play a line-breaking pass. Now personally, I think it's because Arteta's giving these guys too much specific instruction. He's trying really hard to keep their play rigid and to follow his guidelines rather than giving them freedom. Like, I refuse to believe these guys can't play line-breaking passes. You're telling me Zubamendi can't carve out a back line? I just think they've been instructed to play safe, to avoid risks, because that's just how Arsenal play under Arteta. It's very passive, it's very conservative, and history tells us that you rarely see teams win the Premier League playing that kind of pragmatic style. Like, everybody on the pitch is just looking like they're afraid to mess up, and you can't have that. I mean, you look at the way City were playing when they were 9 points behind. Cherki was juggling the ball. He didn't give a rat's ass about the opposition. They don't play with any fear, they play relaxed. And Arsenal, they're the complete opposite. They look like me when I was doing homework as a kid and I was afraid to ask my dad a question, like a math question, because I thought he would beat me if I got the wrong answer. Arsenal look the same way. They look like if they play a bad pass, Arteta's just gonna pull them out. Now keep in mind, if Arsenal do lose this title, it wasn't just because of that loss against Manchester City. As I stated earlier in the video, we have seen a drop off in their performances ever since January of 2026. Drawing 2-2 with Wolves, losing at home against Bournemouth, dropping points against Nottingham Forest, losing at home to Manchester United. These are the results that have built this situation. That's just the reality of it. Even in the game against City, they were gifted a goal by Donnarumma, yet they never piled on the pressure after that. They never took control. Instead of pushing on, now that they had the momentum and rhythm, they just dropped off again. They were happy with a 1-1 draw. And it's funny, that game in particular, you could actually make the argument that Arsenal played more risky football. They actually tried to attack. The problem is, why didn't you play like this earlier in the season? If they played with that same level of risk-taking and creativity, they would have dominated some of the teams that they dropped points against. They would have never been in a situation where they had to beat City at the Etihad to have a chance at winning the title.
Today, they showed when they press and when they're aggressive, they're a better team.
This is why people have doubted them all season. Because usually when you look at a league leader, they just implement their style, they stamp their authority on matches. Meanwhile, Arsenal, the only thing that they're associated with all season is set pieces. And I think the core issue always goes back to Mikel Arteta. He seems very unwilling or unable to sacrifice control for real attacking threat. Everything is structured with him, everything is controlled. And that was good in the beginning of his project where he was trying to get everybody to buy into his system. But now you're in a position where you have high quality players where you don't need to be that rigid. Because I want to make this very clear. Mikel Arteta is not a bad manager at all. When you look at where Arsenal were when he took over and where they are now, it's night and day. When is the last time they made back-to-back European semifinals where they were always in contention of winning the title? But we are getting to a position where you really have to ask some uncomfortable questions about Mikel. He might have been the guy to get Arsenal to this point, but he just might not be the right guy to get them over the edge. Because if they somehow go trophyless after at one point being in contention for a quadruple, you're gonna have to start asking him, what are you doing? Because it's a great thing that he's done. He's implemented a system, he's built the foundation. Whoever comes after him, if he gets let go, has already had 90% of the work done for him. But we're getting to a position now where it's fair to judge Arteta and be like, hey, maybe you're not that world-class elite manager that's gonna get Arsenal to the title. Maybe you were just the guy to build the foundation. Because at the end of the day, you do not win titles playing the way Arsenal have. You cannot be that scared. You cannot play for set pieces and corners and rely on that to be the action that gets you over the line. The margins in these games are tiny. It's good to score from set pieces. It's good to have it as a tool in your locker, but it cannot be your only tool. And for most of this season, that's been the story and narrative around Arsenal. Yes, some of their fans will try and tell you otherwise, but the reality is if this team was fluid from open play, this league would have been sealed and done months ago. There's clear hesitation in the way they play. There is a clear pattern of this team dropping off around April time. There's just a lack of confidence around them no matter what position they're in. Like I said, they were first place. At one point, they were like 10 points ahead, and most people, again, didn't have faith that they could bring it home.
But what I don't see in Arsenal, I never see personality. And you can see even their fans, they don't believe in them. They were like 9.6. They already talk about bottling the league.
Now, the lack of confidence probably comes from the fact that every single year when April and May comes around, it feels like deja vu. They consistently collapse in the business end of the season, and it all started in 2023.